Welcome everybody to the monthly coaching focus webinar. And this month we're going to be looking at the term leader as coach. And what do we mean by that? I'm Trayton Vance and I'll be presenting our research and our findings and talking to my experience or our experience from running a number of leaders coach programs and trying to create a coaching capability and coaching culture using a leaders coach program. There is some research that we're talking to, there's third-party research, which we'll share if requested. And also there'll be time for questions at the end. So if you hear anything as we go through here, please feel free to put those into either the chat or the Q&A. So a little bit about me, so you know where this is coming from and the context. So I've been coaching organizations, leaders, teams now for over 25 years and worked extensively across many organizations, all three sectors. From shop floor to C-suite, so a lot of experience in there, and I'm going to try and bring all of that to the fore here. At my heart, I'm a pragmatist. I like to understand the theory, but most importantly, understand what works at work, what works for individuals, because they are the individuals that will need to learn, develop, and obviously perform. I'm very lucky that I do what I love and love what I do, and our whole purpose aligns to my purpose and our values, which is coaching for a better tomorrow. So welcome wherever you join us across the globe. So let's get started and talk about what we mean by leader as coach. It's a term, as I say, that I hear a lot of people using, but really unpicking it and actually think to ourselves, what does that actually mean? What does that actually require? What are the changes that are required, not only from individual leaders, but also from organizations to create that leadership coaching capability? So what I'm going to outline is to provide some context of the new world of work. And my goodness, the world of work has changed over the last couple of years. And I'm going to explain why a coaching style is now a must-have. And I use those words strongly. It's a must-have skill for leaders. And I'm going to unpick that and look at the style that's currently being used. And if you like, is the default setting. I'm also going to outline a skill set and the mindset challenges, those changes that need to be achieved for leaders and organizations. And it's not an easy change, and they need as much support as possible to achieve that. And I hope as we go through, I like to be a little bit provocative and ignite your thinking around what some of the actions you might need to take, either as a leader or an HR professional running the cultural programs or the transformation programs within your own organization. And I hope that you take something and I sort of, as I say, ignite your thinking around different ideas or different views of looking at the approach and challenges you're facing. So a new era has begun. We are living through some of the most disruptive times and challenging times in history. What's being called the fourth industrial revolution is upon us, and it does feel like a revolution. And with revolution, new things need to be adjusted. The new world has been impacted, I guess accelerated, if you like, from the global pandemic. And that's had a profound impact in the ways of work and as us as human beings across the globe. AI and technology is advancing, accelerating at a huge pace, and is something now that cannot be ignored. And I'm seeing many organizations adopt that in many forms within their ways of working. Climate concerns are a reality, and cost of living elements are still a concern and remain there for many people, even though we do have new governments across the globe. And sadly, conflicts rage in many parts of the world. So there's a lot of change going on, a lot of challenge for individuals. And although people may not overtly talk into it, it's in the ether, it's in the system. And we need to be aware of that to getting the best out of our people and organizations. So the impact. The impact is the workplace is changing so fast that organizations, individuals, humans are struggling to keep up. Digital technology has changed the way we work and the way in which we interact. And I think things are getting better with that, but we're still learning. We're still in that transition of understanding how to work in that hybrid mobile way. And teams are more matrix, are more remote than ever before. You know, you can have teams spread across the globe with different, obviously different cultures, but different time zones as well. And that provides a challenge for the way we work and obviously the way in which we lead. What I'm also noticing, and you may be noticing it yourselves, is that burnout, mental health, and sort of wellness is becoming real issues, and people are having to really focus on looking after themselves, not just physically, but mentally as well. And that again is another challenge for leaders where they need to look after themselves so they can look after others. And the other major change that's happening within the workplace is now that there are 5 generations within the workplace. And therefore, the workplace has never been more diverse than it is today. And we need to take those into account. And these are just some of the challenges that leaders and organizations are having to face up to in the new world of work. So I hope you agree with me that there's a seismic shift in the world of work has started, and it's not going to go back just because COVID is out the way. We're not going to go back to how it is. So with that in mind, we need to think about how we shift our leadership style and how we adjust our leadership development and the things that we focus on. Because the traditional worker manager relationship has changed. The word manager isn't defunct, but it has to change. Yeah, it's the way in the world is now. It's reshaped how employers and employees see one another. 2, 3 years ago, it was called the Great Resignation. Now it's being called the Great Rebalance. And what they mean by that is that the power is shifting from the employer to the employee. So the words like empowerment and the use of authority from managers, leaders needs to be thought through because people will push back and they want to be empowered. The paradox to that is they never had power before. So when you empower them, they don't know what to do with it. That's another webinar, which I'm sure we can talk more into another month. But there is a means now necessitating a re-evaluation of organizational cultures, leadership styles, and our approach generally to work to enable us to get the best out of our people. And this is a document taken from a Gallup report. As I say, those reports are available on request. And in the past, it used to be my paycheck. Now what people are wanting is my purpose. People want to work for purposeful organizations, especially the new generations, Gen Z, etc., that are coming through. It's not about the money necessarily, although that's obviously a hygiene factor. It's about the purpose, the value that we're adding to society. It's not just about being satisfied. It's about what are you going to do to develop me, to support me, to allow me to be the best version of myself. It's not just a job now. It's a work-life balance. I want a job and I want my life. And there's got to be a balance in that. And what are you doing to accommodate that balance for me? It's not anymore about an annual review and a formal performance review, management review. It's about ongoing conversations that are engaging and help me think and provide direction and also development for myself. And don't focus on my weaknesses. I want you to focus on my strengths. I want you to help me bring my best, brilliant self to the fore and leverage those strengths in any way that you can. And I don't want you to be my boss. I know you have authority, but now what I want you to do is be my coach to support those things all above my strengths, with ongoing conversations, my purpose and my development. It's shifted to where the focus is. It's not just about the employer, it's now about the employee. And they're starting to realize that. And therefore, our styles of leadership need to change. So enter the era of what I'm calling leadership coaching. And I'll explain more about that as we go through. So we use a very simple model here to explain what we mean by leadership coaching. And there are 3 hats that we say a line manager wears when trying to get the best out of the individual and their teams. And even that term line manager is already sort of directive and starting to feel authoritative. You know, you have a line manager who you report into. So even that language is starting to feel a little bit old now. But the first hat is the hat of leader. And as a leader, your role wearing that hat is provide direction. It's provide that vision, provide that purpose, live those values, and energize people, motivate people in a way that excites and engages. And in very simple terms, the leadership role is about articulating a game worth playing. It's very much about the what, but also the why. What do you want me to do, and why do you want me to do it? And believe me, if I don't buy into the what or the why, then I'll disengage. So it needs to be purposeful, as we've seen. So leading is critical. The other hat, which I see people wear a lot, and I'll come back to that, is the hat of manager. And the hat of manager is, if we take that sort of leadership is articulating a game worth playing, very much the manager's role is about how we do things. And the manager's role here is to get things done in a way that which is appropriate, is safe. And we use policies and processes and structure to do that. So in simple terms, managing is making sure you stay to the rules or the boundaries of the game. And then the final hat, and this is where the leadership coaching era starts to emerge, is that of hat of a coach. And a coach's role is to make sure that I enable you to play your best game. You understand the game and why we want to play it, you know the rules and the boundaries, but here I am as a coach helping you play the best game. So these are the three hats that are critical to what I would call high performance. And I'll explain where the focus seems to be for many at the moment, and then where the focus needs to go to if we're to create sustainable performance. Interestingly, when I've been working with many organizations recently, there's a fourth hat that's started to emerge and taking up a lot of time. And that is the hat of the player, the person actually doing the work as well. So as a line manager, I'm being involved and being dragged, if you like, onto the pitch to play the game, as well as try and lead, manage, and coach the team. So I'm like a player coach. And we need to be mindful around how much time, quality time, we give our line managers, our leaders, to actually lead, manage, and coach, and not just play the game. Otherwise, they just become another player in the pool, and no one leads, manages, or coaches. But at the heart of this model is performance. And before COVID, we used to say performance, and quite rightly, coaching or performance is at the heart of coaching and at the heart of this model. But more importantly, and you'll see as this unfolds, what we're now talking into is how do you create sustainable performance? How do you get performance that's sustainable, not just for the organization, for the bottom line, not just sustainable for people, sustainable ways of working, and not being overstretched and burnt out, but obviously the other challenge that we face is sustainability for the planet. And what we're seeing come through in a lot of ways that people are leading and leadership coaching and getting people focused and bringing all these things together is what's being known as the triple bottom line, the three Ps, and an ESG, environmental, social, and governance elements. And I like to call them the three Ps. So people, planet, and profit. And we need to be mindful about how we lead, manage, and coach around all those three areas, and especially the sustainability of people. Because if people are just managed, it will burn them out because there is so much change and so much going on. So we need to be mindful about how we lead, and thus the emergence of leadership coaching. Now, a lot of organizations will say to me, we want to create a coaching culture. And absolutely, you do want to create the coaching culture. But one of the things I love about this model is that I call this the three-legged stool of sustainable performance. Because you just can't do coaching. It can't just be leadership coaching, although that's the skill that needs to be developed. Managing, leading, and coaching are all interlinked. And to be sustainable performance and to be high performance, you need all of those three skills. The challenge comes, though, is because we've become so comfortable with managing in the old world, that when I ask line managers to tell me what hat they wear most of the time, without fail, the response is, I wear the management hat 80% of the time, which in simple sums means you're not leading and you're not coaching. So that stool, if it's only being focused on one leg of a three-legged stool, becomes unstable. It becomes, I would suggest, unsustainable in the world of work that we're working with. So we need to develop an understanding and a knowledge of how you coach and lead more effectively, but more specifically, how you leadership coach. So, and the importance of that is that if we're working 80% of the time on the left-hand side, and this line represents the power, we are 80% of the time disempowering the people that are working for us. And if we disempower people, then people stop providing that discretionary behavior. They stop thinking. They don't feel like they've got the permission, the power. They stop having the confidence to contribute to new ways of operating. And as you'll see later in the webinar, they stop wanting to change or having energy to change and do things. They're just trying to survive rather than find ways of thriving and growing. And that's really important as we go through. So for me, what I'm noticing, there's a real element where there's a danger if organizations and leaders don't change and adapt more of a balance within the way that they lead and stay constantly at the 80%, we're disempowering people, and that is not sustainable. So on the left-hand side, I call this approach, which I'm seeing a lot of 80% of the time, as I say, as an approach which is leadership management. They lead a little bit, but they're managing it. Yeah. And management is, as again, we'll look through, is very much finding the solutions, solving the problems for others. That's hard work for your leaders. They need to constantly be thinking, and thinking takes energy. So they're constantly tired, and that's why we're seeing an increase in burnout as well. So what we need to do is move ourselves to have more of a balance. So it's more of a leadership coaching approach. And obviously at the heart of that is the coaching element here. And please, I'm not saying that we need to stop leading and managing, that's still relevant, but we need to get more of a balance, because at the moment, the management hat is such a default. People are so comfortable with it. We need to create a level of discomfort and capability and confidence to move more and get balance in the leadership coaching arena. And the other way I like to look at this, the way that we're doing is, and I hear this a lot when I speak to organizations, our culture is command and control. And some organizations say, no, we've not got the command and control. But then when you go and speak to their people, it's very much a command and control. The language they're using, it's very directive. It's very authoritative, which is where the managed leadership management comes from. And where we need to move to in this new world of work with this leadership coaching is a way of being more connected and collaborative. And if we can be more collected and collaborative, then we'll create more innovation, more creativity, more solutions, and people will own it because they feel like they're responsible and they've been part of creating whatever the solution is. It also means, being collaborative, that we can be more agile and adaptive, and the world is changing very quickly. So that will be another DNA and part of the operating system, which is going to be critical for organizations going forward. The more connected piece, there's a new term that's starting to emerge, which I'm hearing more and more people utilize, and certainly it's coming through in the research, which is not just about leadership coaching, but about human-centric leadership. And this requires individuals to be sort of more, as it says, more human-centric, looking at the individual that they are leading as a human being, not as a human doing, realizing that they're not a machine that can just be managed. But actually, this is an emotional piece who's vulnerable and will break if not led and managed in the right way. And as part of this, we're seeing an increase in emotional intelligence and the requirement for leaders to be emotionally intelligent. And again, there's Daniel Goleman and others that are out there that have showed research that leaders need to be emotionally intelligent to get the best outcome from those that they're leading, and also the situation which they're operating in. And for those HR professionals within us, you'll be glad to know that the human part of human resources, I think, is now becoming the focus rather than resources. We need to think about the human element and creating sustainability, the cultures that we create and that leaders enhance and work with. This is some other work. This is from Gartner, which says, what are those core elements, cornerstones, the word they use, for modern leadership? And again, you can see the word human leadership. And they're saying that in a lot of the competency frameworks and what people are requiring for the new leadership going forward is authenticity. So those leaders that will act with purpose and align to that purpose, and a true self-expression, making sure that we're happy to be vulnerable, but controlling those emotions when that vulnerability comes up. Being empathetic and not sympathetic, and there's a key difference here. So showing genuine care and respect for those challenges that others are facing, and being mindful of well-being and those human elements of when we are trying to maintain that sustainable ways of working. And the other word, adaptive. Enable flexibility and support that fits the unique needs of team members. It's now not a one-size-fits-all. And when we're working and having different conversations, the leader needs to be appreciative that what shows up will be different every time. And a leader needs to have the skill and savviness to notice that something's different and adjust their style with their emotional intelligence to adjust to have the relevant conversation and ask the right question or take the right action with the team member that shows up. And that's being called human leadership. You may have heard that within your own research as well. And the final piece here, just to share with you, just to show where models and cultural frameworks are moving. And for me, I very much see coaching skills at the heart of all of these. This is Josh Bershwin. They're saying a growth mindset, good old Carol Dweck with the growth and the fixed mindset. If you haven't read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, it's definitely worth reading. People who want to come to work and be the best version of themselves, that's increasing more and more, just rather than coming to work and being as good as they need to be. Now, leadership is the heart of that, of building that growth mindset, having purpose, doing purposeful things, effective, empathetic communication. And in communication, I would put listening, again, a core skill for coaching. Collaboration. How do we get people to connect and to collaborate and want to contribute to the conversation? Not only want to contribute to the conversation, but then to enact on it and action it and add value in the ideas that come forward. Appreciation. People want to know that they are cared for. And again, we're seeing the word well-being come through. So we can see a lot of the direction that these are going is more human-centric. And I would say that these skills that are needed feel entirely around becoming more a coaching style of leadership rather than leadership management. And that's why I think the shift is happening, and it's happening quicker than people think. But how do we do this? How do we develop this capability? And as I say, we've got lots of experience in doing this, and I'm just going to share some basic thoughts. And I love this quote, which is, coaching is profoundly simple. And it is, and I'll show you how simple it is. But it's also simply profound when you get it right. You can change people's lives. You can change the organizational culture by bringing in a coaching capability and a confidence to have different conversations with each other. Because at the heart of it, coaching is just a conversation, but done in a way that's more connected and more collaborative and more empathetic, all those key words that we've seen. So what we need to do is give leaders, and not just leaders, but everybody, the core skills to have a better conversation. Because if we have a better conversation, hopefully that will lead to a better outcome. And those core skills are here. First of all, listening. Then listen to what's being said. Listening is at the heart of having a great conversation. And it always amazes me how many people aren't good listeners, although they think they are. And the other good word here, rather than listen, is what am I noticing? What am I noticing that's going over here for me? So self-awareness, emotional intelligence. What is it I'm noticing that's going over there for the person I'm speaking to? Empathy. What is it that I notice in dynamics between our connections? So the energy, the dynamics, the relationship. And the challenge with that is that the relationship is assumed to be one of management. So straight away, the person you're talking to feels like you have the authority and you're in control. So they wait to be told what to do. They don't always feel safe, that psychological safety. The contract needs to change. And that's one of the things that we work with leaders, is to just think about the relationship and the contract, that perceived contract that they've got with those that they're trying to develop. And if it's one of management, then you're already on the back foot. Then how do you structure a more efficient and more effective conversation? One that you follow their interest and you engage, they want to stay engaged with it, and you get them into coaching term, but we get them into flow. So providing a skill of structuring the conversation, and there's lots of models out there. We use the GROW model to help people structure the conversation. And the other key skill is around how do you process and make sense of the data that you're noticing from yourself and what's being given to you, not just the verbal data, but the other data, making sense of it, the emotional data that might be there, and processing that to get real clarity, not just for you, but to raise thinking and awareness for the other person, i.e. the coachee. There's a great book by Nancy Klein called Time to Think, where on the cover she talks about igniting the human mind. So how do we process data to ignite people's thoughts and generate new ideas and awareness, so that leads to growth and adaptability and all those great things that we've spoken about. And those first three areas are what we call the non-directive skills. It's about us pulling the data from the other party, knowing what's over there. I love the phrase that Stephen Covey talks about in Seven Habits. He said, first seek to understand before you seek to be understood. And what he's saying is understand what's over there that the person already knows, that you can pull out of them before you add your own knowledge, before you push onto them. And what we find in these skills is when we're talking to leaders that they start from adding their own knowledge. They want to solve the problem. They want to put their own advice or guidance in. They want to put their ego and power and control into the conversation. So what they're doing is, in a way, it feels like the person that they're speaking to is being done to, which doesn't create a connected or collaborative way of having a conversation. So one of the biggest challenges of shifting that skill set, but more importantly, that mindset, is get people to start at the top rather than start conversations at the bottom. And as I say, Stephen Covey, seek to understand, listen, understand what's over there before you seek to be understood. And my experience is most people know most things. You just got to give them the space and time to be able to offer you that, to put on the table or into the conversation. And leaders need to understand how to do that effectively. And here's another way of looking at, we call this the range of approaches. I'm sure you've seen similar models where, and I put the sort of the sunshine there, as it's such a beautiful day today. Most leaders we work with operate from that bottom half, that left-hand side. They push advice, guidance, suggestions, give their views into a conversation because they want to solve it, because they think as a leader manager, it's their job to solve the problems and give great solutions. Well, a great leadership coach will ask great questions, which evokes great solutions from their team, which is a more connected and collaborative way. So when we operate with leaders, we very much keep them in that pull side to develop those skills, listening, obviously, structuring the conversation and processing their data effectively. And our experience tells us to create that skill set, but also the mindset shift, that takes at least 2 days or sort of 16 hours of work across a certain number of weeks. And we keep them specifically in that space because that's not the default setting. The default setting, what we need to shift is the push. You know, what Michael Bungay Stanier calls the advice monster. We need to help them control, notice to start with, and then control the advice monster. So it's very much keeping and developing the skills in that pull half on the top there. And then interesting when we come down and we refine and help them to understand how they can provide more of a push, people find that uncomfortable. So it's really interesting to see how the mindset shifts, and we get more balance between the push and the pull, because I'm not saying that pull is right and push is wrong. What I am saying, though, most people operate as the default as constantly pushing. Yeah. And what we need to get them to do is flex and know when to push, when to pull. And our simple principle is pull before you push. Understand what's over there before you put your content into the conversation. That way you'll connect better with the individual, get more collaboration, and build a better, sustainable organization, which people will want to contribute to. So the question we ask ourselves, okay, that sounds like a lot of time and effort to shift that. And I would say sometimes it is, but it's a bit like the boiling frog. The water is getting hotter. And if you don't adjust to this new star that's required, you're going to get left behind. And the sustainability of retaining people, of attracting people, will start to crumble. And there's a cost to that. There's also a cost for a value in developing and working that. And again, this is one of my favorite organizations, Gallup. I'm sure a lot of you have either used Gallup or you use some sort of Peakon score or employment engagement. And this was a project which came out last year where they compiled over 20 years of data across all those different industries. And you can see that by having a different conversation and engaging employees in a more connecting, collaborative way, these are the results. And you've got your own organizations. If you were to put some financial numbers around here, then I'm sure that is a good return on your investment, over a 6 to 18 month period, in which you can get that return. And what they use, this is the Q12. So these are the questions that they ask when they ask those things. And again, what I love about these questions, and they've been around for years, it just hasn't been the focus, is they're very much leadership coaching focused now. They very much focus on their coaching skills, and also a balance of the three hats: leadership, management, and coaching. But a lot of coaching elements there. So a few challenges, a few things to think about. Certainly for leaders, if you're a leader on this webinar and thinking, I think that what you need to be thinking about, how do I transition to and succeed in the new world of work? Because it is changing. Your old ways of operating will not work in the new ways of working. You need to think about how you can adjust. And for some leaders, that's really tough. Warren Bennis wrote a book, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. And for us as individuals, as they get older, it's hard to, with the neuroplasticity, it's hard to shift to those new ways of operating, but it's going to become critical that we do. And that requires you to transform yourself as a leader, to transform others with the coaching, the support, and your team, and helping people to grow and be more connected and collaborative with each other, and then be more sustainable in the way. There will also be the challenge, not just the commercial challenge, but people will be more demanding of you. And also, obviously, the challenges with the planet and making sure that everything is sustainable. And going back to that sort of focus, what does that mean for me? It means that you need to become more human-centric. Treat people like a human being, not like a human doing, and being more authentic, empathetic, and agile with your approach. And while at the same time, hopefully, growing yourself, looking after yourself, and enjoying a work-life balance, because it's really important as a leader to look after yourself as well as those that you lead. The other area, talking about those that you lead, that you may want to think about is these new ways of leading will require a new way of following. And if we're going to give people the empowerment, which psychologically they don't feel that they've wanted it, but they've never felt they had. And then when you give people that power, they've never had it. So it can be quite uncomfortable. The way I look at coaching is a dance. And what you need to do as leaders and within your organization is create a different dance. But you can't just teach one side to dance, because when that leader goes to dance with the follower, then it will feel awkward. A bit like dads dancing. It won't feel relaxing. It won't feel enjoyable. So they'll push back. And if the followers push back to the leader, then the leader will stop doing it because it becomes too difficult, especially with the other things that are going on. So one of the things we've learned to create leadership coaching is you also need to create coachability. You need to educate and engage the whole organization around what these new ways of working are and what that means, not just for the leader, but for them as the follower, as the coachee, that person being coached, because they want a lot of these things, but they've also got to give as well as sort of ask for it. They've got to give. And people need to be thinking about what empowerment comes with responsibility and accountability, and reinforcing that accountability and them taking responsibility for their own actions. So it's another element to consider in thinking about that. For those that are looking at transforming your organization, and many organizations are because they realize they have to, and as we know, transformation is not easy. Usually, without doubt, it has cultural change in part of that, people having to change their behaviors. This is some fascinating data from Gartner again. And what they've done in the research is that they've noticed that the change volume has increased. I know it says 2022, but I think it's going up even more now as we go into 2024, the speed of changes and just the requirements and the demands that we're putting on individuals, not just on the bottom line, but how we want them to work and getting more out of less. But interestingly, the willingness to change and the ability and energy to change because people are tired is withdrawing. And they're calling this the transformation deficit. So as leaders of organizations, of cultural change, you need to be mindful of this and make whatever change you're going to do something that's sustainable. And also, without that being too cliched, Change is going to be the constant. So how do you create within your organization an organization that is adaptable and change able? And I think, again, coaching for change, supporting through people through the change curve, all those different things, is a skill set that leaders will need to adopt and help people through in what is going to be, for many, a difficult transformation to get out the other side and get to a place that is sustainable. So no surprises from the sort of priorities for last year, and I believe they stay for this year as well. The top areas focus for chief HR officers is around leadership and management development. Although notice there's no word as coaching in there. Leadership coaching development. I should rephrase that and maybe speak to Gartner about that. Organizational culture, that transformation, which again we see the word change management. I'm a great believer you need to lead change and coach change. You can't just manage, you can't force people to change. So even them, when they do this research, they're using what I would call old language. But these, if you get the gist, these are the three areas that will be required over the next sort of 12, 18 months of organizations, and the requirements to move from leadership coaching way to make sure that your people and your organization are sustainable and can continue to deliver the great work that they do. And in very simple terms, come with the challenge, common coaching focus. We've worked with many organizations around these challenges and helped to shift those mindsets. In the old days, we call it coaching culture. For me, it's a sustainable performance culture, enabling people to make that transformation ready for the new world of work. So if any of you would like to talk to me about the Leader as Coach program and how we bring that into any transformation programs or any cultural changes you're trying to develop, then please get in touch for a non-obligation discussion around your needs.